now. Okay, so this session is being recorded. Good morning, everybody. Uh, what we're going to, let me introduce myself. First of all, my name is Norman Hagan. I'm one of the Employability and Careers consultants here within Ulster University. And what we're going to talk about this morning is about how we action plan our career, how we career action plan, how we then look at designing our career, and then how we will mind map that to give yourself the ability to create a visual representation of your thinking, really. Okay, and we'll talk first of all, we'll go through and look at the kind of layout of what's happening today. Okay, so really this is about you fulfilling your future career ambitions. And one of the things that I would say is if you're at that stage of your career, and we'll talk about the career journey and we'll talk about the resources that are available to you through the likes of your employability portal to help you better understand potentially what your ambitions are and what impacts on those ambitions and what factors impact on them in terms of your thinking in relation to designing your career, career action planning, and mind mapping your career. So it's really about planning today, but preparing for tomorrow. Now, the one thing that I will say is there's no secret to career success. Okay, we have a winning formula, as we would call it, and that is employability. And employability, just as a kind of brief overview and definition, employability is your ability to develop your career, secure graduate level employment, or move on into postgraduate provision, or depending on what year you are, a placement even. And employability is about having those skills, those qualities, and those attributes that meet the criteria in the role that you particularly want to go into. So that's why qualifications come first and foremost. Graduate level jobs require you to have a degree. Okay, so that's the key. The qualification is the gatekeeper, shall we say, in terms of progressing into those, what we would refer to as professional level or graduate occupations. That's why you've spent 3 or 4 years at university. That's why you've done the degree program. It's about getting a return on that investment, both that financial investment and that time commitment to the hard work and the studies that you're completing, so that you progress into an occupation at a level commensurate with the work that you have put in and the time and the effort that you've put in. So the qualification obviously is vitally important, and that's why it comes first. We then talk about employability being aligned to the work experience that you have. Now, that work experience can be paid, it can be voluntary, it can be through your placement year. So I have just heard a great formula. Thanks, Donna. Oh, you're back. Okay, good. Just I get a wee ding when the message comes up, and it's kind of sort of distracted me a wee second there. Sorry. So the work experience that can be paid, it can be voluntary, it can be your part-time work, it can be your placement work, it can be your summer vacation work, it could be your seasonal work over the Christmas holidays. And that experience allows you to experience the world of work and further develop your skills and your attributes and your qualities aligned to the skills and the attributes and the qualities required in the occupation or the particular sector, if we're talking broadly, that you wish to progress into. And work experience is really important. And again, whether it's paid or whether it's voluntary, it's about having that position of responsibility that shows you can plan and manage and organize your time, that you have interpersonal and communication skills, that you have those leadership skills, those critical thinking skills. And it's a really good way of exempling those. And that's why it comes directly after your qualifications. Now, the strategies that you employ today, what we're going to talk about is a very important strategy, and that's the strategy of career action planning. This is not a one-off career action planning process. This is a process that you can take with you through the rest of your life. It's a nice process. It's quite a simplistic process to get you really thinking about what factors impact on your ability to make decisions, create an action plan, and to progress your career journey. So that's one of the strategies that we're going to talk about today. And what you'll notice with the equation there, it's your qualifications plus your work experience plus those strategies that you employ, but it's multiplied by confidence. It's about having that confidence to apply for opportunities. It's about having that confidence to be able to eloquently articulate your skills development when it comes to selection and recruitment processes, to talk about how brilliant you are and how that brilliance has developed in a confident, not a conceited way. So confidence is vitally important, and we develop our confidences through our academic studies, through those work experiences, through participation in voluntary activities in terms of being the likes of the class rep or the school rep or the faculty rep, or joining clubs and societies and having a position of responsibility within those. So those confidences are developed in a number of different ways. But again, it's really, really important to have that confidence to do your research, to look at opportunities available to you, and more importantly, then applying for those opportunities and doing the preparation work as well. Okay, sorry, just DVD. Okay, Donna's putting a few things in the chat bar. Do please feel free to interact and answer the questions that are being put in there so we get an idea of who you are and what you're doing and what stage you're at, so that we can then look at sort of tweaking this as we go along in terms of potentially what we're going to talk about, so that it's more kind of specific to you. So this session really is looking at covering the strategies that you can utilize to enhance your prospects. If you remember the formula, that strategic thinking and planning and action planning is really, really important. It's an important facet of that employability journey. And what we're going to talk about is ownership through reviewing your employability journey. So where have you come from, and what stage are you at in terms of thinking about progressing on to the next stage? We look at the 4 stages of career action planning. We'll talk around those stages, and we'll help you, provide you with resources to help you better understand those stages and getting engaged with the process of career action planning. We look at the options then in terms of availability of those options, and then we will look at this SMART goal setting. SMART goal setting stands for specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time bound. So it's a nice way of setting down step by step what it is that you need to do in order to further progress your career. And the first step could be book an appointment with an employability advisor to have a discussion about where you are on your journey and where you see that journey going. One of the things we always say to students is it's not necessarily about knowing exactly what you want to do, but it's about knowing what you need to do next in order to better understand what you might do. So sometimes students will say to us, well, I don't know what to do, so why would I speak to an employability advisor? And that's exactly why you should be speaking to an employability advisor, to tease out some of the things that potentially you might be able to do, looking at opportunities that you can avail of in terms of further developing your employability related skills and helping you to progress seamlessly throughout that journey. Okay, Ruth, excellent. All right. I'll let Donna pick up on that one. So then looking at, thank you, Donna. Looking at then moving on from that kind of SMART goal setting, looking at how you design your career mind map so that you have that solid visual representation of the possibilities, okay, that you've better understood through that career action planning process. Okay. So when you enroll for your particular program, each year when you re-enrolled, you will be asked a question in terms of which statement best suits where you feel you are on your employability journey. So you would have enrolled for all your modules. When you were finally enrolled for all your modules for that particular year, the question would have appeared, where do you feel that you are on your employability journey? And those statements were then placed into 4 different categories: explore, plan, act, and sorted. Okay, I'll put the link in the sidebar to the employability journey. Sorry, when I say sidebar, I'm referring to the chat bar. So yeah, okay. And when you looked at that, and when you look at this kind of explore, plan, act, and sorted, it's kind of very similar to the kind of career action planning cycle as well. So for example, in the explore section, it would have said there were 3 subsections within that. You know, I'm not ready to start thinking about my career yet. I have no idea, but I want to start exploring my options. I have some ideas, but I'm not really, you know, and I have some ideas, and yes, I'm ready to start planning. So again, when you're looking at this in terms of thinking about where you are, then it's a case of kind of starting to think about where you are actually on your journey. Okay. And again, sorry, there are things popping up on my screen here. Let me just get rid of those. There are many, there are lots of resources and activities that can help to support you exploring your career options. Depending on whether you looked at the explore, the plan, the act, or sorted in terms of the particular categories in relation to where you felt you were on your employability journey, depending on the box that you ticked, it will be directly associated with your B number, then the resources that are curated within the employability portal for your particular area on the employability journey. So I think as a starting point, it's a good idea to have a look at the employability portal, click on the journey tab, and spend a bit of time in there looking at the journey that you're on, or where you felt that you said you were at the time. And that may well have changed. Question: is there a right or wrong place to be in your employability journey? Absolutely not. Everybody's different. So they are at the end of the day. Everybody is different. And where you are on your journey will change depending on your circumstances. So when you enrolled at, say, the end of your final year, depending on what you've done during your final year, then that may well have progressed you along your career journey. You may have been investigating a particular option, realized that that's not an option for you, and that means you've taken a step backwards then. And I don't mean that in a negative way, but it's about looking, and we look at career action planning, we will see that that is a cyclical process. It's not a linear process that just keeps, you know, moving on in a straight line, but it's a cyclical process because we as individuals change, the labor market changes, qualifications required to progress into particular occupations change. So, you know, with technology as well, we've seen occupations changing significantly, you know, within the fourth industrial revolution. So a fairly simplistic answer is there is no right or wrong place on your employability journey. It's where you are at, but it's important to know where you're at in terms of where it is that you want to go and the steps then that you need to take in between then. And that's one of the really good things about creating that kind of careers, designing your own mind map in relation to your career journey, so that it gives you that visual representation in terms of where you are now and potentially where it is that you might like to go. And as a result of your research, you may change and diverge onto another particular road or pathway. So that is important to understand, that those pathways can change and will change as you progress along your career journey. This isn't just about you understanding career action planning and mind mapping and designing your career journey at this point in time. This is something as a process that you will repeat many, many times throughout your career. And that's something that you need to be aware of. So again, we have the explore option. We then have the plan option. Hi, Mohammed. Good of you to join us. Thanks very much. Mohammed, if you're a wee bit late, you can see, no need to apologize at all. You'll see within the chat bar that I've put the link to the previous record, or where the recording of this will be. But it's great of you to join us, so it is. I'll do just a quick recap for Mohammed in terms of what we're covering. Okay, ownership, reviewing your journey, career action planning, looking at options and goal setting, and designing your career mind map. Okay, so we'd mentioned about the sort of four areas potentially of where you might feel you are within your journey. We looked at the explore option, then the plan option. Okay, so I know what I want to do, but I'm not sure how to get there, and that's a really frequently, commonly held perception among students. I kind of know what I want to do, but I really don't know how to get there. I have a career in mind, but I would like to gain relevant work experience. Again, thinking about the employability equation, and again, one of the things that I would really strongly advise people, regardless of where they feel that they are on the journey, is that they then think about booking, a consultation with the employability advisors within their particular campus, or you can in fact use any employability advisor on any campus. I've just put the links in there in terms of booking a consultation with an employability advisor, and I will have a slide then at the end just to reiterate and remind people that's what you can do. And the point that I want to kind of make in terms of whether it's explore, whether it's plan, whether it's act, or whether it's sorted, there are resources there to help you. Yes, there's the physical resource in terms of the employability advisor, but there's also then those online resources within the journey tab, within the employability portal, within the handshake platform. Okay, so that offers the ability to, for example, handshake, search for opportunities, connect with employers and peers across the university, and register with online events. So if you haven't already registered on Handshake, go into the employability portal, click on the Handshake tab, and get yourself registered, but also build your profile. Think of Handshake as a kind of LinkedIn for higher education students. Brilliant, Donna. Thank you for putting that in there. It allows you, the Handshake allows you to, search for university on campus jobs through the UU Temps. It allows you to look at and apply for placements. It allows you to look at and apply for graduate opportunities. But there are also a whole other range of resources out there that will allow you to kind of check for work experience, check for opportunities to kind of look for graduate jobs and placements as well. And I'm just going to cut and paste those then into the chat bar for you. Okay. So in terms of thinking about knowing what you want to do or having an idea in terms of thinking about what it is that you want to do, but not being sure how to get there, absolutely book an appointment with the employability advisor. To have that discussion, look at the research in relation to options with your degree, and we'll talk a wee bit about more about that in a minute as well. So whether or not it's explore, plan, or time to act, then ready to start applying for jobs, but it's understanding then the application process. Okay, and again, been applying for opportunities so far and have not been successful, as was brought up in the chat bar earlier. Well, that's a case then of really getting an appointment with the employability advisor to see what's happening. Is it the application stage? Is it the CV? Is it the interview stage? What type of interview is it? What type of jobs are you applying for? What other possibilities are out there? To sit down and have that one-to-one discussion with somebody who's an expert in the field in relation to understanding recruitability and the processes that employers employ in order to run their selection and recruitment exercises. Okay. Again, if you're interested in working for yourself, then that's when we talk about enterprise and entrepreneurship. Okay, and we look at assisting our students in terms of progressing along that particular path as well. Again, in terms of acting, we will have our careers fair, careers event, recruitment event, graduate recruitment and placement fair, whatever we're going to call it this year, come October. But there are other than events, recruitment events and careers fairs that are happening. And again, the likes of the Target Jobs, the Prospect, the Grad Ireland will allow you to have a look at those events that are happening Frequently they're online, so that you don't have to actually attend the event itself, but it's important that you're aware of those events, that they're happening, that you're able to go in there and have a look and see, well, what opportunities are available to me in line with what my career aspirations are. And again, whilst the employability advisors physically can sit down with you, or do it virtually, I suppose, and have that conversation with you, uh, within your platform, the employability platform, there are a range of tools to help you apply for positions. Okay, we have the likes of the Vmox Cv Builder, which is an artificially intelligent algorithm machine learning platform that will review your CV for you, recommend changes that you should consider making in terms of either content and layout. But again, what I would always suggest is that even if you're using our VMOC platform, always bring what you consider to be the finished article for an employability advisor to sit down with you and have a look over it to see specifically what changes can be made as a result of having a conversation with you. Sadly, PhD cannot access VMOC. Let me take a note of that, Mohammed, to see. If you're registered as a student, I thought you should, if you can access the platform, you should be able to. Well, I'll just make a note of that, and thank you for letting me know.
Just
I'll
to
follow
add,
that up.
sorry for the background noise. Just to add that,
It's
yeah,
okay.
I'm registered for the handshake, but for the tools like Vmoc and cover letter builder, something like that, I cannot access. Yeah,
Right. Okay, do me a favor, will you, and stick your B number in the
yeah,
chat bar for me there.
no, for sure.
I'll follow that up with the guy that looks after the VMOC platform. My understanding was the license was accessible to anybody with a B number. I'll just take a note of that. B0077781160. Okay, thank you.
Norman, sorry, Norman, for interrupting. Mohammed,
Oh,
how
go
are you?
ahead.
Norman, that is correct, Mohammed. Yes, typically for undergrads, but that might be changing because of our new platforms that's going to be being brought in over the next new semester, Norman.
Okay, all right.
Uh-huh.
I wasn't aware of that, Donna.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
thank you.
no problem.
I think that's
But
certainly worth knowing.
I will be graduated in next month. I need it in for
Four,
timing.
two,
Well, look, the thing is, if you can't use the platform, Mohammed, you can use the Employability and Career Service. You can book an appointment with the Employability Advisors to sit down and have a conversation with them about that. So absolutely, do please reach out. As Donna said, call into the Employability and Career Center on your campus if you're on campus. If not, the links are there in the chat bar, and I'll put them in again in terms of making an appointment to sit down with one of the employability advisors to go through your CV and have a look at it and see where improvements can be made, either through changes to the layout or rewording, or, if there's a specific position that you're applying for that requires a CV, then bring in the job spec, the person spec, the job advert, and we will look at then kind of really targeting that CV development to that particular thing that you're applying for. Okay. So again, the likes of the Interview 360 platforms on there, the Integral 360 platform, where you can, again, it's an artificially intelligent, algorithmically driven platform where there's a whole bank of different graduate type questions that can be asked at an interview, either generic questions or specific to particular sectors that you can avail of to give you that practice in terms of actually sitting an interview, so that you have that practice whereby you develop that confidence in terms of hearing yourself answering questions. You get that automated AI feedback in terms of suggestions in relation to how you potentially might improve, whether it's the pace of your speech, whether it's the clarity of the language, whether or not you're using those kind of words that better articulate your skills development aligned to the particular criterion based or behavioral based question. Okay. Thank you, Donna, for sorting that in the chat bar. Much
No
appreciated.
problem.
Okay. So again, that's the 4 stages of your employability journey. And just to reiterate, in terms of thinking about career action planning and mind mapping to design your career, that journey tab on your employability portal is something which you should certainly be exploring. Okay. So I want to now talk about the process of career action planning. Okay. All right. Sorry, I was just reading the chat board there as it come up. Okay. So in terms of the first step then in career planning, what we want to talk about is personality. And it's really about knowing who you are. There's, uh, it's about helping you to make decisions about your career, about your progression, about the sector, the occupation of the role that you might want to be going into. And this is about you developing an understanding of yourself. And this is really important. I mean, I'm not going to go into major depth about kind of different careers, theories and stuff, but ultimately at the end of the day, this is based on the theoretical kind of models of career development. And this is why this is first, because your values, your interests, your strengths, your traits, and your ambitions will have a major impact in terms of how you progress. And we can talk about all the different types of career development theory or self-determination theory, but this is a fairly simplistic approach. But you can spend more time investigating how we as human beings develop our career, because what interests you may not interest somebody else. Your particular strengths might be better aligned to some occupations rather than others. And again, it's about your ambitions as well. And this helps you to become aware of that interrelationship between you as an individual and your occupational choice. And there are a lot of kind of free online, resources that you can use through the Employability and Careers portal or within the hub, online self-assessments to determine your temperament, style, and related occupations. And we run a lot of workshops and stuff as well in terms of thinking about you as an individual and who you are, and where maybe your interests and your strengths lie in terms of the particular role that you want to go into. There can be no denial about the interrelationship between personality and career development. It's long been held, whether it's through Holland's theory of career choice or Bandur's social cognitive theory or Parsons' trait and factor theory of occupational choice, or even Super, the godfather, I suppose, of all careers theory, that self-concept theory that occupational preferences and competencies along with an individual's life situations, they change with time and experience. And that's why I want to reiterate, this is only the first stage in career planning, and we go through the 4 stages. You'll see that stage then can progress as you change and as you begin to further develop your career. A really good resource is the Prospects career planner, and I'll just put this in the sidebar for you to copy for a later date to have a look at. And when you look at the slide there, it sort of says what it does on the tin. It matches your skills, your motivation. And you remember I mentioned self-determination theory and looking at what motivates you and those kind of ambitions, your traits, your strengths, your interests. And it says here in desires to a career that's perfect for you. Well, I think that's a bit of an oversell in a career. This is about generating ideas. This is about you beginning to explore options and opportunities, because you can't be what you can't see. If you're not aware of an opportunity, you can't avail of it. If you're not aware of an occupation that exists, it's very, very difficult to progress into that. So, if you bear in mind you can't be what you can't see, then you need to think about broadening your horizons, doing the research, looking at occupations, because as I kind of mentioned there, with the likes of self-confidence, self-concept theory, Donald Subers, we as individuals change over time, but occupations and roles change over time. Sectors change over time. The requirements in terms of either academic requirements or the skills, criteria, aptitudes, they also change over time as well. And that's one of the reasons why we have an employability and careers department. We look at the research, we understand the labour market intelligence, we understand how sectors change, how employers change in terms of their selection and recruitment processes. And that's why we're here then to provide you with careers education, advice, information, and guidance to help you do this, to help you career action plan, to help you design your career and mind map your career so that that progression becomes less stressful first and foremost, but ultimately looking at you achieving the goals that you want to achieve. So that's if you get an opportunity, have a look at this in terms of either the career planner or the job match beta. Okay, and again, you register, it's free. You can go on, it'll throw up a number of job titles, and you can go in and then investigate those in much more depth. So again, when we've looked at personality, then the next thing to think about was, well, what are the possibilities? That's about doing the occupational research. So it's about looking at what might suit you, then looking at that in much, much more depth, okay, in terms of your occupational research. And again, thinking about looking at industrial trends or industry trends, we talked about, I mentioned labor market intelligence is what we would call that. So that's something that we would suggest that you also need to be thinking about. If there's a particular sector that you've identified, or your degree program is aligned to a particular professional body, then make sure you're keeping abreast of what those industry trends are and looking at experiential learning or work related experience aligned to those industry trends, so you're contemporary, so you know what you're talking about when it comes to the selection and recruitment processes as well. So again, career options with your degree. Do we know this? Okay, if you have an idea what kind of industry sector you want to go into, please share it with us in the chat bar. That would be excellent. So again, we generally pick from what is around us. It's what we know and it's what we're comfortable with too. But this is about getting outside of your comfort zone in terms of exploring those other options that exist and how different opportunities will allow you to develop yourself as an individual in terms of your personality, but also becoming aware then of those possibilities that are out there. And again, when we say about career options with your degree, about 40% of graduate management programs, it doesn't matter what your degree's in. It could be Byzantine studies or it could be nuclear physics. It's just that you're educated to that graduate level. And that's what I referred to when we talked about at the start in terms of the employability equation. That academic qualification is the gatekeeper. That's the key in terms of progressing in the graduate level of employment. But when you look then at the likes of prospects, for example, what can I do with my degree? And I'll put it in the sidebar here. What you can clearly see is that, it's everything from accounting to zoology. And when you look at that, within that particular section, when you click on what can I do with my degree, you scroll down. I'll actually share the screen with you at the minute. Where are we? Let me see. Share screen. Share application screen. Where are we? Entire screen. Window. Why is it not letting me share? Oh, it's a Microsoft Edge tab. Let me take it out of this one and put it into the Microsoft Edge tab rather. Okay, so let me see. No, it's not sharing that. Can everybody see that? No. Can you see that okay, Dawn?
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
Norman, we can.
Okay, perfect. Happy days. All right. I'm trying to work off two different screens here and two different applications. So for example, and I'm just going to pick one off the top of my head, I'll scroll down and just stop. Okay, so let's say you're studying environmental science. Okay, what it will give you are jobs that are directly related to your degree. Okay, but what it will also do is look at jobs where your degree would be useful. So for example, a horticultural therapist, I've never heard of a horticultural therapist before in my life, to be honest with you, but this is again about doing the research and looking at the possibilities. So let's say, well, for the sake of argument, we've looked at this and you're thinking, oh, nature conservation officer, I'll have a look at that. What you'll see on the right hand side here is it will give you information about this. It'll talk about the role, the responsibilities, salaries, working hours. So this is information gathering. This is doing the research in terms of exploring the options. And again, it'll talk about postgraduate courses as well. Talks about the skills you need, gives you information and potential work experience, and where you potentially might look for jobs, but also importantly, looking at that kind of professional development side of things as well. So for every one of these, what you'll find, let's just pick another one quickly. We'll look at food science. So again, job options directly related and indirectly related to your degree. So again, nutritional therapist. What we'll see here is responsibilities, qualifications, work experience, careers, prospects. So this is a resource. It's a really good starting point. But what you'll see then is there are a load of links within this that you can then further investigate those possibilities. Okay. So let me stop sharing that. Go back to sharing the file. And back to the slide that we were on and share. Right, so we're back to where we were. Sorry, it was actually the next slide we were on. Okay, so again, stage one and stage two, we've looked at personality, we've looked at the possibilities. What you need to think now is where we begin to start planning and making decisions. Think about the information gathering that you've done through that kind of options with my degree, that labor market intelligence, that research, and looking at kind of understanding the that occupational research, I suppose, is it encapsulates it all. But it's really important now about planning. You've identified some of the options. It's then about developing an action plan to implement those decisions. Okay, so we've looked at personality, we've looked at the possibilities. This is where we get into the planning, and this is where the mind mapping starts to begin. Okay, where you've kind of looked at a particular possibility and start to think, well, what do I need to be thinking about doing next? These are some of the potential options. Where the pathway is going to take me in terms of what I'm going to have to do. And again, we talked about that SMART goal setting where it's specific, it's measurable, it's realistic, it's time bound. And again, think about the next steps in terms of the short term goals to be achieved, either within the next 4 or 5 weeks, and the longer terms within the next year. So if you're thinking about going on to do a postgraduate, where are you applying to? What happens at the end of that postgraduate year, for example? So the more that you kind of specifically identify your goals, the more likely you are then to achieve them. And this is then where it becomes important to begin to really get proactive in terms of connecting with the employers, going to the careers events, looking at that research in terms of who employs environmental scientists or nutritionists or biomedical science, and starting to do your research in terms of searching for particular work related experience. Okay, and successful career planners, they keep moving forward towards their goals, and you using a variety of different methods. Okay, and again, think of the things that you will have to do to reach your goals and think about how they are incorporated into your mind map. And again, think about the challenges that you might face and think about that as within your mind map, looking at what those challenges are. And again, figuring out to deal with how do you deal with those challenges. Well, that's where the employability advisor comes in. Okay, have a conversation with them about some of the challenges that you face, because we have met many students over many years and we are aware of the challenges. Hello, sorry. Donna, are you on? That, that's all right. I heard a voice in my ear there. Okay, so again, that's about the action stage. So that's the 4-step process, and you'll see from the arrows there that, and back to the question that was asked earlier, is there a right place or a wrong place to be on your career journey? And the simple answer then was no, because how you develop your career looks at the 4 quadrants in terms of looking at the personality, the possibility, the planning, and being proactive. But it also requires you to do those things, take action in terms of what's on that outer ring. And as a result of exploring those options, you might go back and take a look at yourself in terms of thinking, where we're going. Would I say career planning is an arduous task? No, it's an exciting task. People come to university to develop their career. So this is part of that career development process. This is about you looking at the possibilities and the options. And sometimes it's kind of really exciting when you come across something that you didn't know existed, you didn't know was a potential career path that was open to you. And it's nice getting those actions down, on paper through that mind map and getting a look at that visual representation of where you are and where you want to be. And it's like anything else, where you write things down, where you create that visual mind map, it's almost a driving force. And again, I don't want to bore you with self-determination theory, but this is about you looking after you in terms of how you progress. And again, it's about getting a return on your investment in terms of the time and money. So what is a mind map? I've sort of talked about it, as we've gone through, and it is that graphical way to represent your ideas and your concepts. And as part of that decision making process, it allows you to better analyze, comprehend, synthesize even, recall, and generate new options. And that's the exciting bit, because sometimes you will generate new options that you may not have thought about before. And again, it's coming back to that you can't be what you can't see. And again, it's that ability to radiantly think, that technique using colors, non-linear structure. And it's really about encouraging that brainstorming and to set those goals, because remember what we said, this is about career action planning, to set those smart goals, to give yourself a map, because you know where you are, you have an idea of maybe where you want to be, but how do you get there? And it's like taking any journey. Everybody uses Google Maps now. Nobody reads a physical map as such anymore, except me. I always keep one in the car. But it's about having that map that you kind of think, well, where am I going to progress on to? And looking at how we then think about doing that. Now, in terms of designing it, there are a few guidelines. It doesn't have to be complicated. This is your mind map, folks. Okay, there's no right or wrong way of doing this. It says here, starting the center of a blank page. I suggest using a big A2 page, and lie down on the floor and get your colored pencils or your crayons or your felt tips or whatever, and have your laptop beside you. Look at, beginning in terms of thinking, just, well, who am I? For example, what are my passions, what are my interests, what are my values, in terms of thinking about that stage 1 in personality. So put your main theme in the center. I'm not to support you in your career journey. Donna, thank you very much for supporting the sidebar there. I'll have this wrapped up in about another 5-10 minutes, and then if there's any questions, I'll take them. And if there's any then that I can't answer, I'll certainly get back to you in
No
relation to that.
problem. Thanks, Norman.
Cheers, Donna. Thank you.
Thank you.
So put the main theme in the center, and then second, third, fourth levels, to the first and second levels. And it's about connecting those themes to visualize and understand your career path more easily. Again, 1 or 2 keywords per line. This generates their own array of career related themes. And again, I would strongly suggest using colored images throughout. It kind of adds energy to that creative thinking side of things. So your career map then, in terms of looking at it, you're in the center of this career map. And when we look at the colored circles around the center in terms of your career map, it very closely is aligned to that career action planning cycle. You can see it, intuitively, in terms of, kind of, what are your qualities? What are your achievements? Thinking about the barriers, is important as well, because if you can identify potential barriers before they actually become barriers, then you can identify solutions to those. But again, looking at skills, aspiration, knowledge, and interest, very, very similar when we think about that career planning or career, sorry, mapping tool, whereby, sorry, career planner tool, where it is about how your interests, your hobbies, your achievements, your academic areas, subject of study will generate a range of occupational ideas. So what I want to do is kind of show you now just a few very kind of brief mind maps. And these are kind of ones that other students have developed in the past in terms of getting them to think. I love this one. I chose this one particularly because of the center color wheel that kind of went on a whole tie-dye thing, and we're, you know, doing a whole big scribbly thing. But again, when you look at that kind of degree in biomedical science, clinical science, physician associate, healthcare, biomedical, clinical, you know, they've done some research in terms of, well, what are the potential options that are open to them? And even if you know, even if it's at this basic kind of stage, you can bring this in, you know, and sit down with the employability advisor and have a conversation. Yes, it should be the very first thing in the chat bar. I'll copy it again and put it in now. So let me see, copy. I'll put it back in the chat bar, paste. Can you see that now, Hazel? Right. So I get you, Hazel. Okay, no, perfect. Sorry, I thought, right, I forgot you kind of having access to the chat after you actually come into the chat box. Now, this, as I was saying there, you know, this is it's a great starting point. Now, this individual here, kind of when she thought about the kind of role and had a discussion with the employability advisor, you know, it was more a kind of person-centered role that she wanted, you know, in terms of actually working directly with the patients rather than kind of working in the lab doing the pathology assessments and stuff. So eventually then looking at the physician associates program, then that mind mapped out there in terms of, right, you know, research in relation to where the postgraduate PA courses are run, looking at costs, looking at funding. So from each of these, then, you know, it has certainly room to grow in terms of thinking about the map that you use. Now, there are some tools, and I'll give you the links to those tools in a minute in relation to, you know, kind of pro forma that you can use to fill in. I personally think I prefer the kind of pencil and paper and crayons kind of version, because it gives you that kind of greater freedom to kind of go and think about what it is that you want to do. But again, some of those kind of online tools that you can use, they allow you to populate boxes, they allow you to upload pictures and files and all of that kind of thing. But it's really kind of about starting to get the juices flowing in terms of looking at the map and in terms of, you know, what it is that potentially you might do. So again, you know, when we're looking at this is a BSc Honours International Travel and Tourism. And when you look at it, you know, there are a number of options in relation to kind of, you know, how do I travel? How do I become a photographer? How do I become a travel writer? You know, looking at working in hospitality, events management, education, and all of those sorts of things. And from that, then, you know, there's the option to kind of think about, you know, well, what do I need to do? What do I need to consider in relation to that? So there's a whole different range of things that you can do when creating your mind map in terms of looking at how you potentially display it and what you feel is important. So for example, here's another one where they kind of use the colored kind of pathways, roadways, for want of a better word. And again, BA honors art, fashion, sorry, art, textile, and fashion. So looking at working in the accessories industry, the fashion show industry, the retail industry, you know, looking at design, hairstyle, education, and then boutique type stuff. And from that, then, you know, looking at seeing where there are potential occupations that they could potentially think about going into. And again, looking at some of the connections that they already have and how to utilize their current network and connections to help them progress into that occupation. I particularly like this one in terms of psychology because it's their journey within psychology. Now the difficulty is this slide hasn't copied across and converted particularly well from the PowerPoint when I uploaded into it, so you can't particularly read it very well. But they've looked at kind of, 3 or 4 main areas potentially that they could go into as a result of their degree. And look, sorry, apologies. And again, looking at the next steps in terms of needing a postgraduate qualification meets the requirements of the British Psychological Association or the BACP. Looking at where particular jobs in psychology, um, are advertised to kind of start to do that kind of research thing, and looking at where the different salaries, because salary, to most people is an important thing to think about when they're thinking about what particular role. And again, that comes down to your personality in terms of thinking about their values and stuff. So as I mentioned, there are a whole range, and I'll put these in the sidebar. I've probably put 20 in here, but you can pick and choose between them and have a look at them. Okay. Oh, that didn't work. Why is that no? Hold on. It's all right. Technical difficulty. There we go. There we go. Okay, that's better. And again, I've mentioned there that there are those kind of templates, and you can download the template and start filling it in. Again, I certainly wouldn't pay for one. There's plenty of free ones out there. Or again, use a simple Word document. I suggest, as I say, getting an A2 sheet of paper and using that as a start, because what you'll find is you'll start to go off on divergent pathways or roadways using the journey analogy. And, as you're doing your research, you can add to it, pin it up on the wall, go away from it, do some research, come back to it, because it's yours at the end of the day. That's the important thing really to remember. Okay. So that's looking at the career action planning, setting the SMART goals, looking at mind mapping. We did mention that the employability advisors are there to help you, and these are just some of how the employability advisors can support you, both in terms as an undergraduate or a postgraduate or a PhD student. But once you are an alumni of Ulster University, you can come back and use the Careers and Employability Service at any time. And remember what I said, it's a cyclical process. So, you go and do a postgrad somewhere and you think, right, I'm an Ulster alumni, come back, I want to speak to one of the employability advisors, you can do that. Okay. And again, it's through the handshake. If you haven't registered on the handshake platform, please register. Please get your profile completed and look at the events and opportunities that are there within that. We mentioned that there are employability advisors on each campus. We have 2 in Belfast, Jordanstown, 2 in Magee, and 2 here where I'm based in Coleraine. Now, I need to update this slide because Eilish Spence is currently on maternity leave, and we have another girl then who is covering her maternity leave. So there is somebody on every campus. If you live beside Coleraine but happen to study in Belfast, you can come onto the Coleraine campus for your appointment. So that there is that flexibility there in terms of using it. There are a whole range of other future events happening this week. Okay, so when you go into the Employability FutureYou program, okay, I'll just put the link in the side there. Okay, you'll see that there are a whole range of events. So supercharge your interview skills, exploring online assessment, careers cafe employer insights into navigating recruitment processes. So there's a whole range of things happening this week. And I would strongly suggest, again, this is about understanding what opportunities are available to you in terms of developing your career. That's the important message, I suppose, from today. It's about, yes, how to career action plan to develop your career, how to design and create a mind map to develop your career, but also looking at opportunities whereby you can develop your career in terms of everything that encapsulates. So that's the Future Skills Week. I just want to bring up one opportunity that potentially you might want to consider. This was one that was brought to our attention for graduates who are either unemployed or underemployed. Okay, it's the Assured Skills Academy. Unemployed or underemployed or want to change your career, Assured Skills Pre-Employment Training help you. This is an academy that kind of expanding companies are looking to develop skills, and they like graduates because you're educated to a particular level, and you can go in and you can do particular academies aligned to your own aspirations and your own ideas. And then at the end of that academy, you will get a job interview with the particular company that's looking for those skills. The other thing that I want to say, last but by no means least, is your graduate exit survey. Okay. And we would ask anybody graduating to please complete the exit survey. It takes less than 5 minutes. There are prizes to be won, but it gives us that feedback that we need to ensure that we're hitting the mark in terms of what we are delivering. And this is something that we look at and we constantly review what we're doing in terms of, are we meeting the needs of the students to enable them to progress along their career journey as seamlessly as possible. Nobody's saying that this is easy, folks. Okay, this is quite difficult because it means taking a look at yourself in terms of who you are in relation to your personality in terms of that stage one, spending the time and the effort looking at the possibilities, and that can be really enlightening at the end of the day. And then thinking about, well, how do I plan this, what decisions do I need to make, and then thinking about being proactive in terms of, right, I've identified what suits me, what I would like to do, I understand how I'm going to do it, now I need to be doing it. Okay, because time nor tide wait for no man or woman or person. Folks, that's me. I've run probably 5 minutes over time, but I'll take a couple of minutes. If anybody has any questions for me at all, please feel free to ask them.